right. Hello, El Paso, Juarez, Las Cruces, New Mexico, Texas, everybody. It's good to see everybody today. We're live streaming we're on Clubhouse right now, Twitch Live, Instagram Live, Facebook Live, Twitter Live. And it's me, I'm Dr. Aldo Maspons with Maspons MD. And we're joined by a bunch of different people today from all over El Paso on Clubhouse. We got Hector Lopez moderating. Thanks to everybody joining in. This week there was something very monumental that happened in health. One individual event that lasted 10 seconds, maybe 20, completely probably saved lives. Millions of lives, and he did more in 20 seconds than most physicians do in their entire career. And most athletes probably do more than most athletes do in terms of health. And that was Cristiano Ronaldo this week during a press conference at the Euro Cup. He went up to the conference table and saw two bottles of Coca-Cola. He looked at those bottles of Coca-Cola, scoffed at them, picked them up and brushed them aside, moved them over and held up a bottle of water and just said, agua. And with that move alone, Coca-Cola's, I think they lost about $1 billion in worth on their stock prices. And more importantly, it sent a message to youth and to everybody that sugar water, Coca-Cola, sugar water, juice, etc., is not healthy. Water is. It's all you need, just water. And so as an advocate in the Latino community for healthcare and other underserved communities in terms of like disproportionate healthcare, sugar water, Coca-Cola, juice, Pepsi, Mountain Dew, Rockstar Energy, etc., you don't need any of that. You only need 3 things in life to drink. Well, actually just one: water. Black coffee, water, no cream, no sugar. Tea, water. Tea bag and water. That's it. So essentially you should only be drinking one thing in life, and that's water. Nothing else added, just straight water. And I wanted to share that message with everybody. It was just so impactful that Ronaldo did that and didn't sell out to corporate interests, and everybody gets sponsors, and he's just so massively popular, has so much wealth that it doesn't matter, a few $1 million here and there doesn't really make a difference for his bottom line. And I'm a big fan of his because of what he did. I'm a big fan of his also. He took care of a couple of, he does Make-A-Wish Foundation, and one of my patients went to go see him, and he was really sweet with him, with one of my patients. It was awesome. So because of those 2 things, I'm a big Cristiano Ronaldo fan. If you guys have questions, please open them up. But otherwise, I just want to if you haven't had a chance to take a look at that clip, so impactful, big deal in healthcare and sports.
So, Dr. Maspons, this is Hector. We're monitoring your different questions coming in from Clubhouse. You have Clubhouse, Austin, Jasper joining us. Yvonne was with us here for a second. We want to invite other people to come on. And, we also have a few people watching you on Twitter, Instagram, and questions are beginning to come in. First question is, Dr. Maspons, are you hiring? Coming from Michelle, CPMP over in El Paso via Instagram. You're also getting questions from folks on Facebook about how you are doing this. Ahmed wants to know, isn't Periscope supposed to be closed? How are you going live on Twitter? You also have questions about health. So let's get to those questions. So what are your tips in terms of Latino healthy living? So no Coca-Cola, obviously, is how we're opening up the volley. But what other suggestions do you have for Latinos in terms of healthy eating habits? I mean, you're a gastroenterologist. You're dealing with kids that are dealing with stomach issues all the time and intestinal issues all the time. So what do you recommend in terms of healthy eating habits, not just for young kids, but for adults?
I think there's a movement happening in medicine, and I think 4 or 5 years ago when I was like talking about this and suggesting it to my patients, I think people were like poo-pooing the whole idea. calling me a little bit crazy, but there's a lot of research now talking about food as medicine, which if you're Latino, your abuelitos probably told you this all the time, come sábila. And I'm not suggesting people eat sábila or anything, but like just these things about just healthy eating. And so your grandparents or our grandparents would talk about how to eat certain things, and this food is for that remedy or whatever. But I think going back to the roots of the food is really important. So water at its core, nothing else needed. And then just single ingredient things. So vegetables, fruits, and then like if you're a Mexican, you're eating tortillas, or Central American, or you're eating arepas, whatever. If you're from South America, if you're just sticking to corn, if you're making it straight corn with like cal, water, and do the whole process, nixtamalización is that's what it's called. Awesome, just going at its core. So not going out to do. There's also this whole like new movement of like decreasing being so reliant on dairy for our calories and proteins. And so there's a big push you'll see about this non-dairy milk coming out, right? Almond milk and soy milk and tree nut milk, oat milk, etc. And so the dairy industry is definitely taking a big hit because of this, and I think it's great. Really, the only reason, not that I want people to go out of their jobs or anything, but I think that the only reason why we need dairy is for calcium. And so if you can get calcium from other sources, awesome. And some people, a lot of vegetarians use the cheese for proteins. So you get that in a lot of like saag paneer dishes or whatever. And but if you can get protein sources from other places, legumes, lentejas, black beans, pinto beans, etc., it's great. So keeping things a single source, not packaged foods. If it grows in a tree, it comes from a tree. If it comes from the ground, it's probably healthy.
There's been a lot of people that have been talking about the fact that Mexican food is unhealthy. Is it generally unhealthy? Are there things that we should stray away from in terms of, there's certain things that we do in terms of our cuisine, in terms of our cooking. How does it work, and what is good and what is bad? Because I think that if you're talking about single source organics, there's so much of that in Mexican cuisine. It's just people don't know the details.
No, and I think there's some like undercurrent stereotypes, maybe racism in talking about Mexican food. I mean, I hear it all the time with physicians. They come in from outside and they're like, you need to stop eating so many tacos and enchiladas and those things are not unhealthy. If you look at a taco at its core, if it's a real tortilla, right? If it's like real corn, a protein source. You can do tomato, lechuga if you do that. And a salsa, I mean, that's a keto diet. What's not healthy about that? That's so healthy. Enchiladas, I mean, maybe the cheese, but otherwise it's a tortilla, salsa, and a protein source. It's pretty healthy. I think what happens in modern day times is that the ingredients, number one, might not be as clean, which makes it kind of tough for people to go out and get. There was a restaurant here in El Paso who sells fantastic tortillas, but they're like $12 for a dozen, and it seems a little bit out of reach. I mean, I thought that was pretty expensive, but I get it. They're doing like high quality stuff, but still expensive. But I think what happens is people sit down at their dinner table and they're drinking their calories. They get Coca-Cola or sangria or whatever, and that's kind of how calories are getting sneaking in. And then the papitas, they're doing takis or other kind of non-natural caloric sources. So I think that's where it comes from.
So Chile, and we just had Cindy join us, and Matt Alex join us on here on Clubhouse. We're streaming on like 8 different places. So okay, we're talking about healthy living with Dr. Aldo Maspons. We're streaming live in other places. So if it seems kind of weird on Clubhouse, it's just you're receiving the feed via my channel here. And Cindy and Matt are welcome to join the discussion anytime they'd like. We're talking Latino healthy living with Dr. Aldo Maspons, and he's a gastroenterologist in El Paso, Texas. And we're just having this discussion about Mexican cuisine. So, all right. So let's talk about Chile, that kind of stuff. I mean, are these items good or bad for your intestine? Like if you eat jalapeno, if you eat habanero.
This is another thing I was talking about, like this kind of like undercurrent, like stereotype, prejudice, racism stuff in food. It is so common. Like I hear a lot of physicians. Well, so they're like, a patient comes in for abdominal pain, and they're like, "Well, stop eating chile or takis." Mexicans have been eating spicy food, I don't know, thousands of years. Chile's been a part of the cuisine for, I don't know. I don't know exactly what the numbers, hundreds of years for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe 1,000 years. And so Chile by itself is not bad. It's not bad. The problem it becomes when there's damage to the stomach. So people often will take ibuprofen, they do Motrin, Midol, etc. Maybe they smoke. Maybe they have H. pylori, which is a bacterial infection that causes irritation in the stomach. And so if you have damage to the stomach already from one of those things I was talking about, maybe even alcohol, so alcohol, smoking, H. pylori, ibuprofen, and then you eat something to aggravate, it's a little bit tough, like chile, that's when you get pain. And so saying like, well, stay off the chile, how about stop drinking, stop smoking, don't take Motrin if you don't need it, get your H. pylori checked. If you're having belly pain, go see your doctor or your gastroenterologist to get checked for H. pylori. Then you can start talking about if chile is bad for you. There's some people, there's like a lifestyle changes for reflux, like people get like pain in their chest. And so like the common things, nothing really fatty, caffeine, gaseous like carbonated drinks, spicy, greasy, those things. Sometimes there's been a few studies that said maybe those things relax the esophagus. There's a sphincter, like a little muscle, and relax it enough so you can get some reflux. But then there's already studies that say that's not necessarily true. So I think chile by itself, bottom line is, it's not bad. It's actually healthy because it has antioxidants, so it's bright colored, it has vitamins, and it's nutritious. And by itself, it's awesome.
So you have
Chile.
So your Dr. Aldo Maspons recommending that you continue to have chile moderately, but in your diet you should always have chile. That's pretty cool.
Chile, man. Yeah.
I mean that's part of the Mexican cuisine, and that's important. All right, so we have Tina Baca, we have Amy Mormon, we have Brittany and Gross, we have Ahmed Bain, we have Julio Medina. We've got a pretty good crowd here across different platforms. We're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitch, Twitter, and Facebook, having a discussion about Latino healthy eating. We're also on Clubhouse with a few people joining us there. If you want to do your question, make your question live, you can do that via Clubhouse. So we'll continue here with the questions on healthy eating. So ideally, how do people manage? Is there a good way to manage your your intakes? There's so many apps now. There are apps from how you can monitor the calories, but then you can go deep into like actual, this is the amount of vitamin intake you had today, this is the amount of iron, etc. What do you recommend, doctor, in terms of all of those things? I don't want to get to a point where it's like everyone's measuring out everything they eat. And I think everything should be really basic stuff. Don't drink your calories, just water. We talked about at the beginning. I think meal planning becomes really important so that you're not caught off by surprise, middle of the week. So I think in our previous shows with Dr. Samir Morali, we talked about that. So meal prepping or meal planning, say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, this is what I'm going to eat, and prepare on the weekend. And that way you have your lunches all set. Plus you're going to save money too. If you can meal prep.
And then not avoiding sweets, as much as possible. Definitely liquid sweets. But when you're getting seconds, don't double up fast. Like let your food rest a little bit. It takes 20-30 minutes for your satiety signal to reach your brain. So allow yourself to get full, and that's fine. And then no nighttime eating. So eating during the day, eat your dinner, and then you're good. And just quit it after that. So just really simple. I think people will start like, they'll come to my office a lot of times and be like, "Hey, doctor, I have this vitamins. I got these vitamins. I got this test done. I got my microbiome results. Can you interpret these?" And we're just not there yet. In terms of like exactly knowing how much is too much and how little is too little on a mass scale. It's not feasible.
So is tech a bit superfluous right now in that regard? I mean, is it like, okay, people can do it, but they should really just be sticking to the basics?
Yeah, I mean, that's for certain types of people. I think it like self-selects for certain people, who are like really might manage things. If you're at that level where you're like looking at your fat intake, like, by the gram and proteins by the gram and all that stuff, I mean, you should be an athlete. Like, you're at that level of like fuel management.
Okay, moving on to more questions, and we see more people joining us. We have Adrian, Marioso, Cindy, Matt, Danny. Man, you've gotten a pretty good audience here, Doctor, across 7 different platforms. So we continue with questions in terms of healthy eating. How should people develop a healthy exercise habits? Is a
every
question.
Day. Yeah, just do something every day, and then the next day do a little bit more. I think like one of my best friends in med school, she Mei Lee, she used to we'd be studying, and then all of a sudden she'd just get up from her chair and just be like, "I'm gonna go run," and then she'd run like 6 miles, and she had never run before, probably like 2 years before that, and then would come back all messed up. So that's not the way to do it. Start slow and then keep it going, and then use times. If you go running and you run for 5 minutes, the next day you try to run the same distance in a little bit shorter, in a faster time, or run a longer distance. But just every day, just use building blocks to start exercising.
So there's a big situation in terms of diabetes in the Latino community. It's talked about a lot. It affects Latino community a little bit higher than many others. What are your suggestions in terms of diabetes, in terms of managing not developing the type 2 diabetes that could be developed from a person's habits? What are your thoughts on diabetes, doctor?
Let me one last point with the diet and the exercising part is that people, it's the summertime, everybody wants to have their abs and everything. I think key point is to know that abs are made in the kitchen, not necessarily exercising. Exercising's absolutely important, but diet is like 90% of fitness. So keep that in mind. For the diabetes, I think when you're with your loved ones, take a look at them, see if they're a little overweight, and if they don't know they have diabetes, take a look at their neck, and if they're cool with it, take a look at their armpits, and see if it's kind of velvety. If it looks velvety in the back and their armpits, it might be something called acanthosis nigricans, which is the beginning stages of insulin resistance, and so most people who are like that are going to be a little bit overweight. So I think it starts there. Just recognizing and taking yourself seriously in terms of like your health. So getting checked out. But acanthosis nigricans, I think, is definitely should be more recognized amongst just kind of family members. Even like barbers, I think it'd be awesome if your barber's cutting your hair and tells you, "Hey, you think you have acanthosis nigricans?" That'd be kind of awesome. You get diagnosed by your barber.
There's not very many people that know exactly what that is, though. So why don't you flesh that out for people a little bit more beyond the symptoms to look out for? What is it?
I mean, it's actually not like it's not a disease or anything. It's just like a sign of something underneath. Usually when you have like outward signs of something that's different, it's because internally something's been going on for a while. As an example, Sometimes you can get some cholesterol deposits here in your ears. Sometimes the eyes get a little bit lighter, and people say like, "Oh, my grandpa has such beautiful eyes. Look, they're so light colored." It's actually probably cholesterol deposits, and then little bumps around the eyes or around here. The acanthosis nigricans is just it's velvety skin, and so usually like people who have rolls, they're a little bit bigger, and so they have rolls on their neck, and so it's just different colored. It's a little bit darker, more velvety skin along in the neck and on the armpits, and that's not a disease, but what it is it's a sign that should tell the eye or the other person to say, hey, there's some insulin resistance going on. This might be beginning stages of diabetes.
Oh, I see. So yeah. Are there particular habits in our cultural, ways of life that give us a predisposition to diabetes? And if so, what are they? Yesterday
we had at the office, and thanks to the staff at the office, we had like a Father's Day lunch, and it was like a lot of desserts and stuff. And then I'm like, well, where are the vegetables? And they're like, it's just this one time. But is it this one time? It feels like the norm is more not eating as much vegetables, and it's more normal to just eat carbs. And so like, take a look at when you do like potlucks, now that everyone's like going on summer vacation mode, we're going on to the kermes season coming up. Look at your plate, and if half the plate is not vegetables, it's not enough vegetables. We need more vegetables. I think that's my biggest thing about being back home, is that we're not like a salad eating community. So, right? We need to eat more salads, and part of it might be just because the ingredients are just not that great. Maybe I don't know, but we just don't eat that much vegetables.
And it's strange too, because it's part of our cultural cuisine. I mean, people historically ate high indexes of like nopales, ejotes, like camote, like all these, but we don't do that in the US anymore.
That's right, dude. I can't remember the last time I went to a potluck or anything. I mean, like a big gathering where there's a lot of nopales there.
Yeah, they're just not. You have to actually dig for them in communities like El Paso, Texas, and that's weird because this is a Latino community. We can now get plátano macho, but we cannot get nopales anywhere, which is interesting. It's just about maybe the way systems are working. So we're now getting people joining us in different places. Unfortunately, we had somebody up on our stage that wanted to ask some questions on Clubhouse, but I guess I had to go. If anybody wants to ask any questions they're back on Clubhouse, and she just came on and she just came up on the stage. So Adrian, we're going to try it for the first time to see if the doctor can actually hear you on the other side.
This is
all experimental. We'll switch the music. But Adrian, are you there? And do you have any questions for Dr. Aldo Maspons about healthy eating habits?
Hear me?
Hello, we can hear you. We can hear you now.
Oh, cool. I can't see him, so I can't tell if he can hear me or not.
I can hear you.
Oh, this is awesome. Hey. I didn't have anything in specific outside of I am in the Black community, and I would love to hear about like correlations you see or ways that like things that are similar in terms of like either dietary or healthy habits in terms of like the Black community and the Latinx community.
Well, I think the soda thing, so I had opened up, thanks for your question, and I had opened up talking about Cristiano Ronaldo and how he put away 2 bottles of Coke during a press conference. So Cristiano Ronaldo, I think he has like almost 1 billion followers on social media. So he's like the most popular person in the world. He put aside 2 Coke bottles and lifted up a bottle of water and said, agua. And that was very controversial because of this corporate sponsor, but it was really awesome. And I think in our communities, the Black community, Latino community, or Afro-Latino community, there's a lot of social determinants of health that affect us. There's definitely in El Paso, but outside of El Paso, and Soda drinking is just because I'm a gastroenterologist and I deal a lot with fatty liver. Number one thing. So if you know anybody who has fatty liver disease, who might be a little bit overweight, has fatty liver disease, nothing sweet to drink at all. And I think that just focusing on water is paramount. The second thing is like just eating more vegetables. So like half your plate should be vegetables, but no matter what it is that you're eating, at least half your plate should be vegetables. And then when talking about the Black community, we had mentioned kind of jokingly a little bit about barbershop, looking at like your barber looking at the neck for something called acanthosis nigricans. But there's definitely there was a in Dallas. I went to med school in Dallas at UT Southwestern, and there was a big push for local barber shops to do screenings for high blood pressure. And I think that people like kind of maybe non-traditional health checks should be a lot more pervasive in our communities, just so we can do screenings, right? You don't have maybe it's too much of a hassle to wait an hour, 2 hours to go see your doctor, but it's not too much of a hassle just to go get your haircut. And while you're getting a haircut, get your blood pressure checked. So I think things like that, just maybe not non-traditional ways of delivering healthcare is important for the Black community, Latino community, et cetera.
I love that idea about like non-traditional. I've never heard that before. Not that I'm very versed in the medical industry, but it is really cool to try and kind of layer things so that we can prevent barriers to entry.
That's a big, absolutely.
So that's pretty dope. Thanks for that. I'll be sure to share it within my community. And thanks, Hector, for inviting me up and being able to hear you.
It's great to have you, Adrian. And this is a little bit of an experiment. Dr. Aldo Maspons has his own podcast, and we're trying to see if we could bring it onto Clubhouse. And it's awesome to have you here and to bring questions. And the idea here being, Clubhouse could be a good way for us to begin to present questions in other forums. And so this is a live recorded podcast on 7 other platforms, and we just thought we'd add Clubhouse to it. So thanks for being a part of it, Adrian. I appreciate you, and it's good to hear your voice again, back from all of that jazz, that all that good time. And we'll talk again in another edition. So thanks for being a part of it.
Thank you, Adrian.
So Dr. Maspons, we continued. We just have a few more questions here. We have Vinod Valentine, Joel Vega, Jose Castro MD, GL Laura, Babette Sepulveda, all on Instagram. It seems like you've become popular on Instagram today. So
shout outs to Vinod. I think Vinod, if you're doing neurology, is that what you're doing? And then Babette, it's St. Pius classmate. I don't know if you remember Babette, Hector, or not.
Yeah, I do.
And so thanks for joining us. We're just trying something new here. We're just taking questions or just talking about health topics. So thanks.
So getting back to your questions, I'm gonna switch to Facebook. You've got an audience there as well. So let's see what we got on Facebook. What would be your thoughts on balancing proteins between eating beef, chicken, salmon? Your thoughts on how to best balance your proteins.
So I think it's gonna be a little bit of a circumventional answer, but I'll get there. When I was training, I took care of a lot of people in the ICU, and in the ICU, a lot of people can't eat, and so what we would do. And they can't be fed through a tube through the nose, so they need nutrition through the vein. And so you give them. So it was there that I realized that we only eat 3 things: we eat proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, and then we eat minerals, vitamins. And I realized that because we give the people in ICU a bag of nutrition. It's called total parenteral nutrition, and we put it through their vein, and then you can adjust things. And if they don't have kidney problems, then you can go higher on the protein. And if they have that's the main thing for decreasing protein. But you can make somebody really big or make somebody really skinny depending on how many calories you give them. And the calories come from those 3 things: fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. And then you need the fatty acids and minerals and vitamins in addition to the above. So when talking about like, taking into consideration like colon cancer rates. So if we look at countries or diets that don't necessarily have so much colon cancer, those countries that don't have that much colon cancer, they don't eat as much beef. Definitely a lot more. And I've said this like 1,000 times already. Vegetables, a lot more fiber. So decreasing your red meat intake is best. And then and then your protein, I think the average person should be eating like 1 to 2 grams per kilo of protein per their weight. But if you have kidney problems, you got to eat less than that. I'm still not this huge fan, and I think at some point maybe I'll get there, of like measuring out food. I just think like being a little bit more common sense about what we're eating, and that's just simple food. So like if it's really difficult, if there's a lot of ingredients in your foods, then unless it's like spices, then it's probably not that healthy for you. But in terms of the original question of balancing of what things to eat, salmon has some extra stuff just because of the omega fatty acids, and so you're going to get a little bit more benefit than beef. As a personal choice, I probably eat beef like once a month or once every 2 months. We've only cooked beef in my house like twice probably in like 5 years. So we stay away definitely from beef, and mostly because it's colon cancer rates. We don't do it. So that's my take on proteins. And the other thing is like this whole like fake meat, this what are they called, incredible burgers and all these things.
Yeah,
so not sure. It just seems weird to eat. I think the future of probably food supply is probably going to be that it's made